Welcome to today's America Today podcast, Preparation versus Prevention, America's Views on Climate Change. I'm your host, Sarah Kohler, and today we have two guest speakers who will be debating the issue of climate change. We have President Trump, who will be representing the current administration, and Dr. Katie Geszner, a climate scientist and Harvard University alumnus. Our nation is in the midst of an unprecedented period of intellectual conflict. This is highlighted by events such as the People's Climate Rally, the March for Science, and the Keystone Pipeline protests. The Trump administration appeared to be moving away from the Obama administration's progressive views on climate change. While according to surveys done by Gallup and the Pew Research Institute, the vast majority of citizens are aware of climate change, the main issue arises when it comes to causation theories. According to a 2016 Gallup report, around 65% of citizens believe human activity has contributed to rising temperatures, while just 31% believe natural causes should be blamed. Dr. Geszner, in this way, you represent what the majority of citizens believe. Please explain what the scientific case behind human causation is.
Well, Sarah, climate change is the alteration of the world's climate over a long period of time. This is due to a combination of natural and human causes. The amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere from the burning of fossil fuels has grown from 316 parts per million when monitoring first began in 1958 to now hovering around 400 parts per million. Conditions in the pre-industrial period were around 280 parts per million. This clearly shows a direct correlation to human causation through the means of the Industrial Revolution. The planet's average surface temperature was 0.8 degrees Celsius warmer during the first decade of the 21st century than during the first decade of the 20th century. The most significant occurrence of warming was over the past 3 decades. Most of this warming can be directly attributed to human activity through the burning of fossil fuels for energy. The argument of natural causation is inept, as natural variations from year to year do not explain long-term warming trends.
So what role do you believe the United States have had in contributing to climate change?
Well, a quote from the Washington Post states that the US has contributed more to climate change than any other country. This includes oil fracking and the production of coal and gas. A large issue in America is the consumption of gas. America has the largest amount of cars on the road in the world. Due to the low costs of gas, Americans use less fuel-efficient cars, unlike many parts of Europe and Asia who use fuel-efficient vehicles due to the high gas price. All in all, 25% of the total global contribution towards carbon emissions comes from the US.
Mr. President, what interpretations will be guiding the current administration's policy regarding climate change?
It is the belief of the current administration that climate change is not created by people. We, as Americans, do not need to worry about the ideas and issues of climate change, as it is simply a natural issue, and we have to wait for it to roll over and be dealt with naturally. The current administration will not be ignoring the issues caused by climate change. There will be procedures put in place in the event of a crisis due to climate change. We strongly believe in strengthening the economical state of America and Americans. We aim to focus our attention to more pressing and real issues, such as the current healthcare crisis facing America, with the fall of Obamacare and the citizens' need to affordable healthcare.
As I stated earlier, the majority of citizens believe that climate change is caused by human activity. On top of this, an overwhelming percentage of people believe that scientists should be the most significant contributors to policymaking regarding climate change. It is noteworthy then that a recent report of 6 separate independent studies found that between 90 and 100% of publishing climate scientists believe that recent global warming is caused by humans. With this in mind, Mr. President, how do you reconcile your administration's beliefs with those of the majority?
It is the job of the state to consider what is best for the people, and to act upon those beliefs accordingly. As I have already stated, of all the issues currently facing America, climate change is not the one that needs to be addressed. Before we begin to fund potentially unnecessary research, it is the responsibility of the state to ensure that the economy is strong and sustainable. One of the major industries within America was the coal industry. As a response to the claims of human impact on climate change, many coal mines were shut down under the Obama administration. As a result of this closure, 83,000 Americans lost their jobs working in the coal industry. Focusing on a better America, a financially stable and successful America, in which all Americans are allowed fair opportunity, the Trump administration is going to re-energise the coal industry. We will lower the unemployment rate from 4.7% by creating more job opportunities via the coal industry. There has already been a job increase seen in the mining industry according to the American Bureau of Labor Statistics since my administration came into place. The unemployment rate is the lowest it has been in 28 years and is believed it will continue reducing. Although the views of the Trump administration may go against those of many Americans, the administration always has and always will put forward what they believe will be the best for the American people.
Thankfully, the three of us can agree that climate change is real and that it will or already is affecting us in some way. Mr. President, what effects do you foresee the United States facing?
We do not deny that the world is changing. Evidence shows that the world is heating up, the sea levels are rising, and there has been an increase in natural disasters. We acknowledge that these events are issues and can cause death in certain situations. We also believe that over the time, effects will worsen. However, this is unpreventable. We should focus our attention to more pressing matters. Although we acknowledge the effects caused by climate change, evidence also suggests that attempts to mitigate emissions could increase water stress levels more than climate change itself. As important as it is to prepare for any natural disasters caused by climate change, it is important to prevent other issues such as the increase of water stress levels. The previous policies in place under the Obama administration to mitigate emissions could be causing other issues. It's important to review and change these to prevent the effects of this mitigation worsening.
Dr. Geszner, I'm sure you would like to elaborate on this.
Well, Mr. President, climate change is not just hotter weather. There is a huge threat to our current way of life if the global mean temperature continues on its rise above 2 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial levels. Global warming is associated with an array of other climate changes. These include a decrease in the Northern Hemisphere snow cover and Arctic sea ice, rising sea levels, extensive acidification of our oceans, and more frequent and intense rainfall. A US Global Change Research Program report has identified that these changes pose as risks for a variety of environmental and human systems. These include freshwater resources, the coastal environment, ecosystems, agriculture, fisheries, human health, and national security, just to name a few. It cannot be stressed enough that the ultimate enormity of climate change and the severity of its impacts are greatly dependent on the response of all citizens and, more importantly, our policymakers. Our planet is at the brink of destruction. We all need to work together to combat climate change.
Well, Mr. President, this brings us to policy. You have stated you disagree with President Obama's decision to sign the Paris Agreement, as well as requesting the EPA review the Clean Power Plan he set in place. The CPP forced the states to make a reduction in emission levels from their electricity plants. The aim was to decrease the 2005 national levels by 32% by 2030. Certain states have already announced they will continue their transition to renewable energy regardless of the conclusion of the review. You have also made several contentious appointments to your office, the latest of which being Daniel Simmons, a man known for his criticism of renewable energy, as head of the Energy Department's Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. With this appointment and your signing of the executive order to abolish key elements of the CPP and the Paris Agreement, is it safe to assume that you are against renewable energy?
Firstly, the Clean Power Plan isn't about renewable energy. It focuses on minimising the amount of carbon emissions released by pre-existing power plants. I don't believe we need to bother our states with investing valuable time and money into minimising something that ultimately doesn't affect climate change. We should instead be focusing our time and resources to bringing life back to the coal industry and other sources of revenue for the country that will allow us financial stability. As of this current point in time, America is still part of the Paris Agreement. Under the Trump administration, we wish to change this. Throughout my campaigns, I promised America a sustainable and affordable future, and I aim to keep my promises. The nation's families and businesses rely on affordable and reliable energy on a day-to-day basis. Our continued participation of the Paris Agreement threatens to take away the nation's foundation of reliable and affordable energy. Under the Paris Agreement, hundreds of thousands of Americans will lose their jobs, and it will cost America an estimated trillions of dollars. We are looking to lower the unemployment rate, not increase it. And all the while that American people are being negatively impacted due to this Paris Agreement, citizens of lesser developed countries such as India are being allowed to create more emissions and push their country forward. It is unfair that our country and our people should have to be hindered due to outdated issues. We will be removing ourselves from the Paris Agreement.
I would be interested to hear your opinion on this, Dr. Geszner.
I believe that it is very important for our whole country to invest into renewable energy such as solar power and wind power. Removing our reliance on fossil fuels is absolutely crucial to decrease the rate at which climate change is occurring. The Clean Power Plan was the United States of America's strongest action against climate change, along with our participation in the Paris Agreement. Their removal would set a very poor example for other climate change solutions, especially considering, as you stated, Sarah, the majority of states were already working to achieve or exceed their targets.
As discussed in the CPP, renewable energy is a great solution to mitigating the nation's carbon emissions. However, it is important to acknowledge the multitude of smaller-scale solutions that have been proposed. Lifestyle changes such as reducing meat intake and recycling are small-scale solutions that can have a significant impact. Dr. Geszner, what are some viable alternative options to reduce the effects of climate change, and what timeframe are we looking at to make a feasible impact?
There are many other solutions that will help subside the effects of climate change. The US government should invest in new infrastructure, including buildings, roads, and highways. 1/3 of greenhouse gases globally comes from buildings and infrastructure, with the US contributing 43% of emissions. As well as cutting these emissions, building new infrastructure would drive economic growth in the United States. Also, timber harvesting should be stopped, as harvesting in the tropics alone produces over 1.5 billion metric tons of carbon, 20% of human-made greenhouse gases. I think the easiest thing that all of us can do is to consume less. Cutting back on consumption of goods will result in fewer fossil fuels being burned to manufacture and transport these products around the world. Also, consumers should think green when buying cars and other automobiles. Try to find vehicles that are fuel efficient and therefore produce less emissions into the atmosphere. In order to prevent Earth's core temperature to increase by 2 degrees Celsius, globally, we will have to reduce global emissions by 6.2% every year until the end of the century. Implementing these solutions will allow the US to help reach this global goal. Otherwise, by 2045, the Earth will be at a point of no return.
Mr. President, can you see any positive implications from these proposed solutions?
As I've stated before and will state again, there is no evidence that supports that climate change is impacted by humans. There is no human causation to climate change whatsoever. So wasting resources enacting these proposed solutions is a waste of time and resources. However, I believe that we can prepare for any events that may occur as a result of climate change, and I encourage our states to do so. As it is not possible to prevent the effects of climate change, as we cannot prevent natural disaster, it is in our best interest to minimise the effects these disasters will have on our living environments. Some cities, such as Miami Beach, have already begun creating prevention of damages due to natural disasters. As the sea levels have risen, so has the level of the streets to compensate and prevent flooding. New drainage systems and pumps were also installed, as this is an area known for flooding. It is changes like these, based on statistics of where natural disasters are likely to occur and reoccur, that our government must invest in, and we are beginning to invest in. The government will not be wasting money nor resources on issues that we cannot prevent. We will look for innovative ways, however, to protect our people. So to answer your question, Sarah, no, I cannot see any positive implications from the proposed solutions.
And with that, we have come to the end of today's podcast. Thank you for your time, President Trump and Dr. Geszner, and thanks for listening. Until next time, this has been America Today.